Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Field Day with Jess Phoenix. I am, as you may have inferred, Jess Phoenix. If you don't know me already, I'm a volcanologist, which means I'm a scientist who researches volcanoes. And I've worked on 6 continents. Still need to get to Antarctica, but there is an active volcano there, Mount Erebus. Look it up when you've got a second. But I've been all over the place, suffice it to say. So I wanted to make this show because there's a lot going on in the world right now that's pretty stressful and the exact opposite of uplifting. And there is an amazing side of science that many people never get to hear about, and that is field scientific research. That means that sometimes you are macheting through a jungle, sometimes you're camped out in a lava tube on the side of the world's largest volcano, occasionally you're four-wheeling down a remote mountain pass in Eurasia, and you never know what's going to happen. I personally have had to chase down narco traffickers after they stole my rock hammer when I was working in Mexico once. I have learned to poo outside, which, yeah, that's going to be the kind of show this is. We talk about just about everything. I was not raised as an outdoors person, so for those of you who are like me and were very sports-oriented, but not so much hiking, climbing, camping, I came to this late in life. And that means you can too if you really want to. But what it also means is that there are very few filters on this show and doing scientific field research. To do this stuff, to be the scientists that haul car batteries on their back up a mountain that just happens to be a volcano that just happens to be erupting and shooting out lava bombs, if you want to be that person, you need to have a little bit of something different. You've got to be willing to roll with the punches, to laugh at yourself and everybody else who's with you, and be very comfortable being very, very uncomfortable. And I think that you're going to love these folks who are out exploring the world, doing scientific research, and pushing the boundaries of what we know about planet Earth and our relationship with it. These interviews will hopefully bring you a spark of curiosity, some joy, and some hope, because there are people out there fighting the good fight for truth and knowledge with science and evidence, and we collect that science and evidence through blood, sweat, and tears. And I am not even joking here. I've been injured on more expeditions than I can count. I once fell in a sewer full of human waste up to my hip right before I was supposed to go and be in the Peruvian Andes for 3+ weeks doing research on climate change. And let me tell you, hiking up 16,000-foot mountain passes with a bum leg, not to mention what it did to my poor shoes, that experience is something that it shows you who you are and who we are as humans, as scientists, and as lovers of the world around us. So we're going to have paleontologists, speleologists, biologists, geologists, really any kind of science professional you can think of, meteorologists from all different fields, all different walks of life, all different backgrounds. And they are going to have things that will make you laugh, things that will make you cry, and probably things that will make you appreciate the world just a little bit differently once you're done listening. So please subscribe to this on whatever way you're listening or watching it, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, any of those things, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell people who might want to sponsor the show. So if you happen to work at REI or Patagonia or wherever, feel free to drop me a line, jess@volcanojess.com. You can also find the show and more about it and more about me at volcanojess.com. If you want the podcast specifically, it's volcanojess.com/field day. And I will tell you that again at the end of the show. But without further ado, I really hope you love this first episode. Our intros will be a little bit shorter in the future, but I wanted to give you a little who's who and what's what before we get started. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you love it, and we will only improve from here. So let's get exploring. Joining me today is Dr. Kenneth Lacovara. He is a paleontologist and fossil park founder extraordinaire. Ken is also one of my favorite scientists and people because we have a lot in common with our love for science and exploring the world, but also he has worked all over the world in his quest to help humanity better understand dinosaurs. I mean, that's just the coolest thing. That's like little kid dream come true. But Ken is the director of the Gene and Rick Edelman Fossil Park, and he's the founding dean of the School of Earth and Environment at Rowan University. He's a TED speaker, the author of the really excellent book, Why Dinosaurs Matter, which you should totally buy and read. And he's ventured from Egypt to China to Argentina to even the wilds of southern New Jersey in search of the most fascinating creatures to ever walk this planet. Dinosaurs! Okay, so I met Ken through our membership in the Explorers Club, which is an organization that was founded to promote exploration in the name of science. And ever since he and I met, I've been sort of scheming and plotting ways to work in the field with Ken. Because, in case you didn't know, volcanoes are notoriously bad at preserving fossilized anything. So we don't usually intersect where we work, but I want to get creative. And just as a really cool side note, Ken is also a really accomplished jazz drummer. So he's just awesome. And so thank you so much for being here. And is there anything that I missed in your intro? Anything you want to add in here so our audience can get to know you a little bit?
I can almost always pick the right wrench on the first try.
That is really good skill to have, especially if you're working in a very disorganized setup, like field work, maybe.
But thanks for having me, Jess, and congratulations on the new podcast. This is awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. Like, here's hoping it's a success. But I think you're going to help it be one. So, but yeah, so let's start off. Can you tell me about one of your early field experiences? Tell us a little story about something that really got you excited about doing the work you do.
Sure. Well, my background is in geology, and you're a hard rock geologist. I'm soft rock. I come at it from the sedimentology side. For my master's, I was doing coastal geology, and that involves a lot of what you call vibrocoring, which is you get a big aluminum irrigation pipe and you attach a cement vibrator to it, and you vibrate it down into the soft sediment, in this case, into the salt marshes where I was working. And then you stop up the end and you put a big tripod on top of it, and then you winch it out like that. And then you take it back into the lab and you cut it and you drag a piano wire through it, and then you can open it up and you can see the core. You can see the stratigraphy. Well, this is murderously hard work. And to take these pieces of equipment that weigh, 100, maybe 200 pounds across the squishy salt marsh. And then when you're trying to winch them out, it's not half the time the core doesn't come out, but the tripod starts going in. And so I'm working on my master's. And basically what I did for field help is I called every single one of my old friends from high school, and each of them would help me exactly once because once you do it, you are never going to do that again. So I worked my way through my entire catalog of friends, and then I figured I better start doing some research that didn't involve vibrocoring.
And I will mention that, if folks notice the double entendre at the beginning, this podcast is rated M for mature. I'm just going to give it that rating. And yes, there are a billion double entendres, generally sexual, in geology. It's just, we always say geologists know how to make the bedrock. So you know how to use a vibrator, and I can say I've never used a vibrator as a geologist. So you have got me there.
Very large cement vibrator.
Yes, cement vibrator, which is probably not sold in your typical novelty shops. However, okay. So that's, for some reason, that got you into the field, and you decided to keep this up. So do you have a funny story you can tell us from your days out and about?
Well, yeah, lots. When you're traveling the world and you're going into the very deep, remote places where tourists don't go, there are, lots of misunderstandings that happen and just lots of really bizarre situations. I remember one time I was, this is after I had excavated this giant dinosaur that I later named Dreadnoughtus from southern Argentina, from Patagonia.
Oh, wait, tell
And
us where people may have seen Dreadnoughtus. You got to fill in the folks.
Dreadnoughtus appeared in the middle Jurassic World movie. Weirdly, it shows up first in a lumberyard in Canada in the snow, which I never quite figured out. It was in an Olympic TV commercial with the snowboarder Shaun White. It was in Apple TV's Prehistoric Planet. I got to hear David Attenborough in his most Attenborough-y voice say Dreadnoughtus, that's my ringtone actually right now.
That's amazing.
And it was in shoot, I'm missing one.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's been in a bunch of
Clearly,
documentaries.
Dreadnoughtus is a celebrity in its own right. I mean, T-Rex gets all the friggin' the noise online, but clearly Dreadnoughtus is a badass and deserves to be recognized as such. But
yeah,
continue.
So anyway, I dig up these 16 tons of fossils that represent Dreadnoughtus, 145 giant bones. That just the femur was about 2 meters tall, or over 6 feet. So I eventually get all of the burlap and plaster jackets into a shipping container. I have to take them down to called Rio Gallegos, third most southern city in the world. And I have to go through a lot of hoops with customs, both federal and national, to get it out of the country. And near the end of the process, they say, well, do you have insurance? And I'm like, on the Dinosaur? They're like, yes, you need an insurance policy. So I have to go find a phone. I find this dusty phone booth in kind of this deserty area. And as I go in there, this pack of wild dogs shows up. And now the dogs are trying to get in the phone booth. And I'm calling Lloyd's of London. And so Lloyd's of London has heard everything. And so this guy answers the phone. He says, good afternoon. And I say, I would like an insurance policy on a dinosaur. And he says, for how much?
Wow.
Completely unfazed by this request.
Yeah, look, when you're working with professionals, anything goes. Don't they
I also
insure?
had, when I was 5 years later, now I've already studied Dreadnoughtus. It's time to crate it up and send it back to Argentina. So I'm building hundreds of crates in my wood shop that fall. And I go to the Woodcraft woodworking store, and I buy 2 5-gallon buckets of screws. I put them up on the counter, and the guy says, looks like you're building a deck. And I said, actually, I'm building crates for my dinosaur. And he goes, okay.
Yeah. That's when they start looking at you like, are you well? And
I'm
you're
sure
like,
he had his hand on the button under the counter,
Yes. I mean, I'm sure you've had the experience. I've gotten it more than once where you get stopped at customs and they're like, what do you have in here, rocks? And you say, actually, yes. But you can say, actually, no, it's a dinosaur, but close.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they ask you those questions about, have you been in this kind of area or this? And I'm like, yes, all of those.
Yeah. I kind of just give up and I'm like, yep, got my boots right here. They probably still have dirt on them. I tried to clean them. It's, you can only do so much. But
I was trying to take a giant ammonite, which is a coiled fossil cephalopod that was in my carry-on through the Denver airport. And he literally said, what do you have in here, rocks? And I'm like, well, actually, I do, yes. And so he takes me aside, he opens it up, he sees this thing, and I explain to him what it is, and I explain that they're the index fossil of the Mesozoic and how useful they are. And he says, best baggage check ever.
There you go. You've received the award. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that, like, it's not like I'm going to confiscate your eye drops or, your cough syrup. It's like, oh, well, okay, you're hauling something that's millions of years old. Go right on ahead, sir. Okay, that's great. That's one of like the lighter sides of field work. And although packs of wild dogs, that can be a little bit intense, which actually brings me to, have you got a kind of a harrowing tale or two for us?
Well, as you probably know, it seems like once a field season, there's a moment where you think you're going to buy it, right?
Yep. Oh, yep. Well, at least I've gone out doing something I love.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, I think like most field scientists, I've had a bunch of those. The scariest one, the one that made my legs shake, was I was working on the border of Montana and Wyoming. And I had just found these amazing slabs of sandstone that were preserving the tracks of Jurassic pterosaurs. Pterosaurs are flying reptiles, think pterodactyl. They have a really strange foot setup, so the tracks are very distinct. So I have about a 40-pound slab of rock that's strapped to my back, and I'm trying to get out of there now that I've got these. And so I start climbing up this cliff face. And this is, in retrospect, this was a cliff face that I should have been using a rope on, but I don't know. It didn't look that bad to me from the bottom. And I just start climbing it. And I get about halfway up, and the rock, which is kind of fissile, right? And so the rock starts breaking off in my hands. And then I feel like I can't go up any further. So like, okay, I'm going to go back down. And then I look and I cannot see my feet. And I have no way to place my feet on any kind of a foothold.
Oof.
So I'm hanging there for, really, it was probably 2 minutes, but in my memory, it was like an hour. And I'm hanging there thinking, so this is how it's going to be, like,
Yep.
okay, just like that
Just
idea that you feel
until
like I've
you're
got to
ready,
keep
until
going.
your hands give up and you're like, "I'm gonna just fall backwards and that's it."
Yeah. And then I figure, well, I absolutely cannot go down. I'm going to go up. And I start going up, and the rock is breaking in my hands, breaking in my hands. And then finally I get myself to the top, and I kind of belly flop over. And that was pretty scary. I got to say, that was
And you
that
didn't have
was
to go back down, though.
another longer way down. I was trying to take the shortcut.
Always. It's the shortcut that gets you. And I mean, I've had that experience where people have looked at my pictures and said, like, "Where's your safety harness? Where's your rope?" And I'm like, "Rope? Safety? I'm a geologist. What are you talking about?"
And this is the kind of stuff that I would absolutely kill my grad students if they did on their own.
Yes, but we totally did it ourselves. Like, that's how it
Yeah.
works. That's why you
Yeah.
would kill them, because you know better now.
Yeah. And when you go to the Geological Society of America meeting every year, they will have a list, a poster of, the fallen geologists that year. And a
Yep.
bunch of them are literally fallen geologists.
Geologist, yes.
Yeah.
I did my wilderness first responder certification in January, and one of the questions on the final exam was about, what should you do if somebody falls off of a cliff? But in this example, they were on rappel and then something happened. And I just remember at the end of it, I said to the instructor, "Well, they get to use ropes and harnesses. That's a huge advantage." And I've used them myself now, but yeah, there was a time period when I was like, "Oh, well, I'm not rock climbing. Why would I need that?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, I guess technically we do rock climb when we crawl up these cliffs and into
Yeah.
these weird crevices." And you
Well, and
kind
your
of,
particular speciality is the most dangerous part of geology. If you've never told your listeners, like, volcanologists have the highest death rate because they like to walk out on the Earth's crust that's like an hour old, and whatever goes through never
yes,
comes back again.
this is very true. And yeah, I think, one of the things that you accept when you do any kind of field research is that you are in an environment that you cannot control. And I mean, sure, you hear about people getting hit in their house while they're on the toilet because a meteorite comes through their ceiling. But when you're out where something is ejecting lava bombs onto you, or you're climbing an unstable slope that is, tens of millions of years old and it's crumbly, yeah, those odds of you actually eating it are a lot higher. So
Yeah.
yes, yes. What
One
we do
thing I've
is
seen that's,
mm,
one thing very characteristic about field people is they tend to be pretty laid back, right? Because they've seen everything, and you have to have a high degree of comfort with ambiguity, right? Because you cannot control everything that happens in the field. My first expedition, I made this beautiful plan of what we were going to do like every half hour. Your plan is totally screwed, once you're on the ground for 20 minutes. So now I just
yes.
pack a bag and don't plan anything, and I figure that I'll figure it out along the way, and always do. But
Yep,
I
you
could always
just
tell before I became a dean and then a museum director, I was a professor of biology for 18 years. And our department was split really between field people and lab people. And you could always tell the indoor people because, you know, we'd have a faculty meeting and, it would be announced that like the copier's broken. And the indoor people would flip out about it, and the outdoor people would be like,
Yes, yes. We when I was at Cal State LA doing my master's, we had an instance where we went on a joint field trip with the geography department. And I just remember they were lovely people, but after they got their van stuck for the third time, and it took the geologist lifting the van while, somebody drove out with the wheels that had traction. They allowed those to grip and we lifted the other wheels, that everyone was just over it. And I ended up changing the tire on their van. Everyone else had gone off hiking. And then a couple of the geographers didn't want to go hiking. And so it was me and then a few geographers. And these geographers were just standing there dumbfounded, like, the tire's flat. What are we going to do? And, geology, like a number one prerequisite is you better know how to change a tire in under 2 minutes, or what are you doing out here? And so I
Right.
was, everyone started to trickle back in, and I'm changing a tire by myself with like a group at this point, like 6 geographers around me just staring like, whoa. Yeah. Field fun,
Not that we don't love geographers.
No, they're great. And a lot of them do field stuff. But the group
Yes.
we were with were primarily like urban geographers. And
Yeah.
so I think some of them had never seen the sun.
I've seen this one.
So they were, again, very nice people, but I think we terrified them. And at the end of the trip, my advisor, who was basically he was the chair of the department, and he was the only faculty member on the trip that was from geology. We were all so frustrated because one of the geographers had gotten out of the van ahead of us. That we had 2 different vans. She got out of her van and she was like staring at a plant. And it's, 5:30, 6 p.m. And our professor says, okay, everyone, the question is, do we stop in town to buy beer, or do we get back to camp for food? And everyone's like, oh, what's the right answer? And he finally says, you're all wrong. Beer is food. And so, yes, we went and got beer, and they held dinner for us, so it was fine. But yeah, it's a different breed when you're out there. And so,
That is the
okay,
geology answer for sure.
it is. And so, okay, all right. So we've got where you thought you were going to die. So what else have you got? What's been like the most jaw-dropping type of experience you've had out there in the wilds?
Well, I would say that probably, I don't know, the most sublime moment that I've ever had in the field. This was in Patagonia in 2007, and we had been excavating Dreadnoughtus for 3 field seasons. It was maximally exposed at this point, and so I'm looking at the skeleton of one of the largest land animals that has ever been seen. This thing in life would be 26 meters or 85 feet, and all fleshed out would be 65 tons. That's the mass of 13 African elephants. That's 9 T-Rex. That's about 10 tons heavier than a Boeing 737. So
Wait, let me just underscore this. The dinosaur is 10 tons heavier than an airplane, like a commercial
Yes.
airplane.
Or you
Dear
could say
Lord.
a Boeing 737 plus 2 elephants.
Just that, as
Yes.
one does, we add elephants to our standards of measure. Anything but using the metric system, right?
I recently did a video for Wired, and I said that after the asteroid hit 66 million years ago, I said temperatures got up somewhere between toaster oven and pizza oven, and somebody online commented that Americans will do anything to avoid the metric system.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. When I describe the temperature of flowing lava, I have to say it's 5 times hotter than your oven's broil setting. But then we were in like Lowe's the other day, and I saw there's an oven that goes up to 750 instead of 500. Wow. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to accept the pizza oven setting on these fancy new ovens. But yeah,
Right.
Anything
Yeah.
but the metric system, folks.
So I'm looking at this giant skeleton, and there was an aperiodic comet that came through the solar system. And these are things that astronomers don't know about in advance. They just come through the solar system once and they're gone and they'll never be back again. And it was called Comet McNaught. And it turns out that it grew, the tail grew and the brightness grew to become the brightest comet in the last 40 years. The tail took up 30 degrees of the sky, and
Wow.
it was the 3rd brightest object in the sky at that time, besides the sun and the moon.
Whoa.
It was just unbelievable. Now, this thing came through in such a way that it was really only visible from the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, you could see a little bit at sunset, but not well. And we're out in the field, we're incommunicado. So first we see this little fuzzy thing in the sky, and then the next night it's changed position. So I'm watching it, and then it starts to form a tail. And like a week or 10 days later, it's unbelievable. So there was this night when we had finished up work. I'd sent the grad students and the crew back down to the camp to get water for dinner and to get firewood and to start doing all that. I'm sitting on a rock. I got a bottle of Jameson whiskey, and I'm looking at, one of the world's largest dinosaurs with one of the best comets ever seen hanging right above it, sipping on my whiskey. And I just thought, man, it's never going to get any better than this. And it hasn't.
So you're telling me that you know when you peaked.
I knew when I peaked. Yes, it was
Yeah.
January 2007. Yeah.
Oh, man. No, I get it. There are moments that just make you realize, like, both how small we are in the face of it all, and also how profound what we're getting to see is. And I don't know. It's that. It's like we're just a tiny, tiny, infinitesimally tiny little piece of the whole gigantic puzzle, and
Yeah.
the infinite puzzle, as far as we know.
Yeah.
But
And it's those moments. I mean, you know how field work is. Like, you are never comfortable. You're always too hot or too cold or, wind blasted or sore. When you're excavating, your hands get cracked and they bleed a lot. And, food poisoning's an old friend of mine. But when you get to see something that no human has ever seen before, when you get to know something no human has ever known before, and then when you see something like that, like Dreadnoughtus and Comet Mycnaut in the same view, like, it's totally worth it. And all those creature comforts that you don't have, like, it doesn't matter. I always tell young people, like, I promise you that all of the most meaningful, sanguine moments in your life will all happen while you are uncomfortable, right? It might be working in the field, or it might be standing up in front of everybody and getting married, or giving a TED talk, or taking a qualifying exam, or whatever. You're never comfortable in those moments, but those are the moments that add meaning to your life.
that really resonates with something I always tell folks, which is anything worth doing is difficult.
Yeah, of course.
It's because growth and change they're uncomfortable. I mean, they're uncomfortable for different species to evolve. There's a lot of death and carnage that goes along in the evolutionary process,
Yeah,
but they're uncomfortable for us too. And that is,
sure.
it's only by leaving your comfort zone that you can actually, I think, really expand either your own or the collective awareness of where we fit in it all. And that's why field science is important, because if we can't get out into the world and put boots on the ground and see this stuff firsthand, talk to the local people who know the area or know the stories that surround whatever it is that we're going to see, and really interact with the world directly, not through a screen. I think that's what allows us to really, well, it grows our knowledge of the natural world, not just, we can make discoveries. I mean, lab science is totally valid, but field science definitely has a special place, at least for
Yeah,
me. And sounds like for you
absolutely.
too. And so, okay, so then that actually makes me want to know, tell me about some interactions you've had in the field with locals that may not have gone as planned.
Well, there's a lot of those. One time I was in the Bahariya oasis of Egypt, which is nowhere. It's halfway between the Mediterranean and Sudan, and halfway between the Nile and Libya. So nowhere.
Okay. Yeah. So find a map, people. Find a map.
Yeah. Just pick that big blank spot in the middle of Egypt. That's where that is. And I was there to look for the legendary lost dinosaurs of Egypt. These are 4 species of dinosaurs discovered in 1911 by a paleontologist named Ernst Stromer von Reichenbach. And he excavated these dinosaurs, including the famous Spinosaurus, and eventually got these fossils back to the Bavarian Museum of Paleontology. And they were on display for decades there until April of 1944, when Munich was bombed by the RAF and it blew up the museum and those specimens. And like most dinosaur species, they're known from single specimens. So
Oh,
we lost the entire species, those 4
oh,
species, and they became known as the lost dinosaurs of Egypt. So me and a group of scientists from University of Pennsylvania, we went back there in 2000 and 2001. to try to recover them. I work with Stromer's family, and I got his journals and his old photographs, and I was actually able to find the Spinosaurus quarry. And I found 100-year-old German newsprint and sardine cans and burlap and plaster, because things don't rot in the desert.
Right.
But he didn't leave a single bone behind. But in the process of looking, we discovered a new species of giant plant-eating dinosaur, which we named Paralititan, which at the time was the world's second largest dinosaur. It's been displaced a few times, including by Dreadnoughtus since then. But I was prospecting around this Gebel, which is like a mesa there. And you can see a long way in the desert. And I saw this Bedouin on one of these little like Bethlehem donkeys, or the short donkeys with the big ears. And he's like maybe a mile away, but I can see he's trotting towards me, and he's got a scimitar, which is a curved
Right.
sword out, and he's
Yeah.
yelling. So like now I got a guy with a scimitar who's riding towards me on a donkey, but it's so far
And
away.
wait, so there's one of him. How many of you guys are there?
There's one of me. Yeah.
Okay, so it's one-on-one. All right,
It's
here we
one-on-one.
go.
I'm out there by myself, and it's taking, because you can see so far in the desert, like it's taking a long time. And I'm looking at my watch, like, could we get this over with?
Wait, is it like that scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where they're charging the castle?
That's the drums playing. Like he never gets any closer. Yeah, yeah. So finally he gets there. He hops off his donkey. He's got the scimitar up, and I've got my entrenching tool. You probably know what that is, but it's a small army shovel, and you can cock the shovel part this way, and it makes a good like a resting tool. Or I use it all the time. That's my main tool. I should actually sharpen the edge of it.
They're really good for digging holes to poop in.
That too, and
Yes.
the handle's a nice spot to put the toilet paper roll on.
It is true
Yeah.
facts, right?
Yes.
The more you know.
Yes. So I've got my entrenching tool over my shoulder, and I'm looking at that scimitar. And if he moves with that scimitar, I'm coming across with my entrenching tool. At the time, I could speak, a little bit of kitchen Arabic, right? I could order a meal or get simple directions, but not. I always had trouble understanding the Bedouins because they have a dialect. So he's yelling something at me. And I put my other hand out. I show him my hand, like, look, there's no weapon here. And I very slowly go down to my waist, and I get my walkie-talkie, and I bring it up very slowly, and I click on it. And miraculously, I got my Egyptian colleague who's like 5 miles away. I got him on the walkie, and he explains to this guy who I am and what I'm doing. And he says, and I'm a doctor? I say, And now he's like my buddy. He knows what I'm doing out there. He thought I was a grave robber, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you've
Totally
got a little shovel, like, of
I
course.
got a little
What else
shovel,
would
and I'm digging holes and prospecting. And in a way, I am a grave robber, just really, really old graves. 60, in that case, 95-million-year-old graves. But that was a bit of a tense moment. But then we were buddies after that, and everything was good.
Oh my God, that's a great
So
one.
I would put that in the misunderstanding category.
Yeah, I'd say solidly misunderstanding. It's really good the walkie-talkie came through when you needed it, because
Very good, yeah.
And what was your plan B?
It was that thing. You got to be comfortable with uncertainty. Like I was.
There is no plan B, just hope. Yes.
Plan B was to react to whatever his plan A was.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. But I love that he was on a donkey too, because it's not.
It was a little comical. And honestly, I never really thought I was in danger, because it's kind of like in the Jurassic movies, like the T-Rex yells at its food and then eats it. That's not how it works, right? Animals don't yell at their food before they attack it. And I don't think humans are going to do that either. I don't think humans are going to yell at you for 5 minutes and then attack you. If they're going to attack you, they're just going to do it.
Yeah, and usually they'll want to be more stealthy because they don't want you to fight back. They want you to just be easy prey. So
I wasn't I wouldn't say I was like at max alert. It obviously got my attention.
Right. Yeah. You're like, I need to address this now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what else have you got? You got any other good ones for us? Because I got a few questions for you that are a little more specific, but if you've got some other tales you want to weave in here, I mean, these are great.
Well, down in Patagonia, my first field season down there, I didn't have a way to drive to the field site, so I was getting there by rafting down a glacial stream. And then we had jacketed lots of big dinosaur bones, and I had no way to get them out. So I wanted to find a gaucho and see if I could hire them and their horses to drag the bones out of the desert with the horses. So I hear of this gaucho Ramon, who is squatting in an abandoned astronomical observatory. And so I find this observatory, and it was indeed abandoned, and he was living there with his horses and his dogs. And he had like a little kind of hut near it. We had a fireplace, and he invited me in for some mate tea, and I brought some bread and wine for him, and I was explaining to him in my bad Spanish what I was asking him. And this took a while, and I didn't think I was getting through. And then finally he goes to the fireplace and gets out a photo album and thumbs through it and shows me some pictures of some plaster-jacketed dinosaur bones that he had drug out of the desert for some other paleontologist.
So he's just like, I got you. No problem.
I found the right guy.
But
Yeah.
oh my God, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
about the language thing, you said bad Spanish. I was going to ask, because you said you spoke some Arabic, like the basics.
Yeah.
And so your Spanish is, you wouldn't say you're fluent.
I am, when I'm in the field for a while, I'm conversational. I can go to the hardware store and get what I want. And, I can have a simple conversation. I can't really express my deepest hopes and dreams to people, but I would say I have functional Spanish.
So it's funny to me because I've done a lot of work in Spanish-speaking countries, and I speak Spanish. I learned it when I was a kid because my mom was a Spanish teacher and then an FBI agent who used Spanish for her work. So I was lucky. But I remember one time we were snowed in right near Machu Picchu, like about 7 miles, 15 kilometers or so from Machu Picchu. And we were working on glaciers and glacial moraines, so where the glaciers had pushed the rocks out, and we were dating those. But we were there. It was me and then my friend Joe Licciardi, who's at University of New Hampshire. It was his project. I was helping. And we had one guy, the cook, who was on the expedition, spoke Spanish. And then we had 2 wranglers who were Quechua, and they didn't speak Spanish. They only spoke Quechua. And so that's, indigenous language. And we were talking because we were snowed in. And I just remember I literally tried to explain American football to these guys. And I just remember I was explaining that there were teams, equipos, and I was saying, oh, los gigantes de Nueva York, so New York Giants, which I'm sure sounds really bizarre because I'm thinking capital G Giants, and they're probably like, so there's these really big people in New York?
Yes.
But then it had to get translated from Spanish to Quechua as well. So I have no idea if the Wranglers ever if they ever hear about American football ever again, they're going to even know it's what I tried to tell them about. But you do your best.
But I have a football story. When I was working in the Bahariya Oasis, we were staying in this like mud brick lodge there. And in Egypt, there's always like 20, teenage boys hanging around because they don't have work to do. So they're always trying to help you with your bags and things like that. And so one day, me and my buddy Matt LaManna from the Carnegie Museum, we decided we're going to teach them American football. We brought a football with us. And so we're teaching them the basics. The line of scrimmage was a total alien concept, which I'm not sure that ever got through. But I taught them a pick play. 2 receivers go out, 1 receiver takes out the other guy's defender. You're open, throw the pass, And so we run the play. 2 kids run out. He takes out the defender. I throw the pass. He catches it. Touchdown. And the Arabic language is very kind of flowery, right? It's very poetic. And so he comes back to me and he says, Dr. Ken, that was good information. If you have children someday, you must teach them this plan.
Oh my God. And I know that you have a son. Does he know the plan?
I have taught him the plan. And he has seen on the internet. Now, coincidence? Probably. But it seems like the only Arab country right now that has a U.S.-style football league is Egypt, founded about 2 years after I left the country. Just saying.
You discovered dinosaurs. They discovered the joys of American football, thanks to you. Maybe. We don't know.
Maybe.
But why not? So okay, so this is actually kind of sets me up for asking, I really, it's important, and I'm going to say this in every single episode, but it's important to note that, especially with Western scientists, that we don't operate in a vacuum. Like, we don't parachute into some remote locale and act like we know everything. I mean, that was the way people used to do it way back when. Any search through archives of any expedition will tell you that. There was a lot of, these are my manservants and they will take me exploring. These days, we get it. We understand that the local folks actually have a lot of knowledge that is very valuable. And there are ways of knowing about the world that don't come from, the scientific method. There are other ways that people learn about history and culture and tradition, about dinosaurs, about volcanoes. Like, there's mythologies, there's histories associated with these things. So I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite piece of mythology or bit of historical trivia or something that you learned about one of the local areas where you've worked that comes from the folks there?
Well, working in Egypt is so interesting in terms of, cultural history, and there's so many layers to it. So in this place that we were working, the Bahari Oasis, um, that was occupied by Romans. And, long before that, by much older Egyptian societies. And, you know, um, ancient Egyptians created so many mummies that there were times when they were used later as firewood. They're that common. And so to the Romans, those Egyptians were ancient, and it became fashionable for them to have themselves buried like an ancient Egyptian. So this was just becoming known when we were there. Now, some people call the Bahari Oasis, where I work, the Valley of the Golden Mummies, because there are these Roman era mummies there. And I think there's been hundreds of them found. And then, above that, there's World War II remains, and there's Coptic remains, the Christian Arabics there. And then below that, there's dinosaur remains. And there's just so many layers of history there, and it's so interesting. There's a story that I have from Patagonia that it's kind of a story about the history that didn't happen.
Okay.
So in 1834, Darwin on the HMS Beagle, they arrive in the Rio Santa Cruz, which is where Rio Gallegos is now. And so Darwin, in his European way of thinking, he wants to be the first person to transit South America. What he means is first European to do this. And he picks a really skinny part of South America, right? There's not much of it left when you get down to the bottom of Patagonia. But he goes up the Rio Santa Cruz in a little whaling boat for about 3 days, and he gets far enough along that he sees the Andes, and he starts naming peaks in the Andes. That's where Mount Fitzroy comes from, which now has the indigenous name of El Chalten, but he starts naming peaks there. And then after about 3 days, he runs out of food. And, Darwin, what he did was all the more amazing because he was not a tough guy. He was kind of a little wimpy guy who liked his creature comforts. I think of him as like Bilbo Baggins, he much happier at home. But he went on this, badass, really tough 5-year mission. So he gets there, they run out of food. He melodramatically names this place the Plains of Disappointment, which it still bears that name. And they go back. Well, if they would have went one day further, they would have been in my field area where I discovered Dreadnoughtus, but where you look down at the ground and every pebble that you see is a piece of dinosaur bone. Now, this is 1834. Dinosaurs are recognized as a thing in 1842. So literally, for want of a loaf of bread or a can of sardines, it would have been Darwin who discovered dinosaurs in 1834. What would he have named them? Something different. They wouldn't be called dinosaurs today. Would he have continued on the trajectory that he did? I don't know. I mean, you just found dinosaurs. Maybe that's what you're doing now for the rest of your life. So it's kind of the history that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Which didn't happen right there. He's never been out of the country when he leaves England. And their first stop is they get to St. Jago on the Verde Islands. And there's a lot of new things there. There's tropical fruits there. And Darwin tries a banana for the first time, which he did not like. You can imagine little fussy Darwin, oh, I don't. And who doesn't like a banana? A banana is the most innocuous food known to humans, right? And Darwin doesn't like his is
This
banana.
banana. Ooh, not the banana. But actually, I had a professor in grad school who hated bananas. Couldn't stand the
Really?
smell. This like if you brought a banana into the classroom, she would freak out. So
Bananas
there
are the
there are
ultimate field food. They come in their
oh
own
yeah,
little field wrapper
it's
and
biodegradable. Like it's
biodegradable. You don't get, you cannot, I can't say cannot, but you're probably not going to get food poisoning from eating a banana because they come sealed in their own little package. So they're great field food.
yeah, I love bananas. I love oranges in the field. Actually, what's the worst thing you've eaten in the field? You inspired me.
Do we have another hour? So I have a bad reputation for getting food poisoning, and almost all of it is avoidable and self inflicted because when you're breaking rocks with a pickaxe for 13 hours a day, you get pretty damn hungry. So, you know, I get what I call stungry, like stupid hungry, where I'm just going to eat anything.
Mm.
And so I have basically poisoned myself on every continent on which I've worked. And one time I had been traveling for like 24 hours to get to Lanzhou, which is the capital of the Gansu province, like deep in the middle of China. And I'm super hungry when I get there. And there's this old woman in the back of the Gansu Geological Survey in this little dark alley, and she's cooking up dumplings. And they don't look right. They're gray. They smell a
Oh.
little off. And I buy dumplings from her and I eat like 26 of them. And then I have to get on the night train to Jiaguan, which is this rickety old train that goes over this mountain pass that's been keeping, Mongolians out of China for 5,000 years and goes out to the Gobi Desert. And as soon as I get on this train, I start feeling bad. And so now I need to get to the bathroom. The bathroom on the train is like this little phone booth, just a little wider than me. And there's just a hole in the train. Like you see the tracks
Yeah.
going by. And I spent the night in there bouncing around. My shoulders are bruised when I get out of there in the morning. It was the worst night of my life in the field. But then the next morning, I felt fine. We're in the Gobi Desert. The skies are blue. And we actually discovered a new species of Therizinosaur dinosaur that day, which we named Sujosaurus. But in my house, the euphemism for being sick is you're taking the night train to Jiaguan.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I did spend 18 hours in a train in India where they ran out of food and wouldn't let us get off the train, and they ended up giving us chutney packets. That's what we had to eat.
Wow, that sounds like my experience with every airline these days.
Yes, yes. It makes traveling to get to the field sometimes more harrowing than the field itself, which is not how it's supposed to be. But yeah, the human element is always there. It's like, does your digestive system want to play? Or is it like, nope, I want to go home. I'm done.
Yeah, I kind of think
There's
I should put my gut flora in the Smithsonian when I pass.
that's a different field of biology, I think. But I'm sure that there would be somebody interested in culturing it to study.
Have you had this experience? I have gone to donate blood before and they ask you where you've been, and then they're like, oh no,
Yes.
you can leave now.
Yes, I've
Yeah.
had that more than once. I want to give you the chance to give a message to anybody listening or watching who has never had the chance to do field research or who may be wanting to do field research and figuring out how to get there. But like what kind of message would you give them about scientific field work?
Well, you don't have to do crazy stuff like we do. Nature is all around you. I'm looking at this beautiful meadow right outside my window right now. And, you could literally take any 1 square meter of planet Earth and spend the rest of your life studying that 1 square meter. You could study its history back 4.5 billion years. You could study the microbes, and I'm sure there's little arthropods living there, and plants and fungi, and like it's all right there. Get yourself, the app iNaturalist, which is fantastic,
I love
and
it.
go
I use it
outside
all the
and
time.
yeah, I do too. And, start identifying plants and animals, start to find out what's around you. Get outside, forest bathe, it's good for your blood pressure and your mental health. And like we evolved in the outdoors, obviously. And that's where our bodies that's the environment in which our bodies evolved to function. And I never feel more like me than when I'm outside, particularly if I'm in some remote area. And, but it's all out there. I think it's, if you've got just a city park, get to that, and there's nature there. And, there's the stars above, and, start to learn about your local environment.
Yeah, actually,
That's one of the things.
that makes me wanna say, Ken, you should mention about the Edelman Fossil Park because, again, this is a great example. I mean, like I said, you've been in the wilds of Southern New Jersey. It wasn't
Yeah.
a joke.
Yeah, no, it's not. So, at the Edelman Fossil Park, which is in southern New Jersey, it's about 20 minutes from Philadelphia, about an hour and a half from New York City. Um, I've spent the last 17 years working on this project, and we built this amazing, huge, beautiful new museum. It's called the Edelman Fossil Park and Museum, and it's got a bunch of special things about it. One is that it's built overlooking a 4-acre fossil quarry that goes down 45 feet to the last moments of the Cretaceous period. That's the last moments of the time of the dinosaurs, and we have preserved in the bottom there organisms that literally went extinct in the world's 5th mass extinction, where an asteroid hit and wiped out 75% of species, including dinosaurs, but lots of other things, dinosaurs except for the birds, which some of them survived. But above that layer, from which we have collected over 100,000 fossils representing over 100 extinct species, and we manage and curate that layer very carefully. But above that, we have layers from just after the last time of the dinosaurs that are still full of fossils, and we can let the public come and collect in those layers. I was just in the quarry just a couple hours ago with some families, and they came down there, and the grandmother and all the kids and the uncle, they all found 66 million-year-old fossils with their own hands. And when you find them from this layer, we let you take them home. And, now you have seen something that no one has ever seen before, and you have gotten to know something that no one has ever known before. And we have a word for people like that. We call them explorers, right? And so you can come here and you can become an authentic explorer because you're making an authentic discovery. And that little clam or that little shark tooth that a kid might find, that becomes more important to them than all the T-Rexes in all the museums of the world because it's their discovery. And what we are really trying to do here, when you come here and you go through our galleries, we take you on a tour of the dinosaur fauna that existed here on the East Coast at the end of the Cretaceous period. Then we go in the Monstrous Seas gallery. Everything in that gallery was found on the property in a layer that will be beneath your feet. Then we go into the Hall of Extinction and Hope, where you learn about what wiped out the dinosaurs and who survived. And then we use all that information to contextualize the present moment in which we find ourselves. So we go forward into the Anthropocene, we learn about the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. When the dinosaurs died that day, and I do think they were functionally extinct within about an hour after the impact, when they died, their hegemony had extended for the past about 165 million years. So if you were on Earth the day before the asteroid hit, you would look around and you would think, well, this is how it's always going to be. These dinosaurs, they're just always going to be in charge. And then the next day, they're gone. So if that's not a cautionary tale for us, I mean, if we think that our place on this planet is foreordained or secured or some kind of proclamation of cosmic manifest destiny, you're wrong. We just got here as a species. Our existence on this planet is completely contingent on lots and lots of things. And, we evolved these big, giant, swollen cerebral cortexes about 300,000 years ago. Well, why didn't we have civilization 150,000 years ago or 75,000 years ago? We didn't, because the climate was going through these wild swings between glacial periods and interglacial periods. So you can't make a civilization if the climate is too unstable.
We don't know how lucky
10,000
we are right now.
Right.
Yeah.
About 10,000 years ago, the climate hits the period of remarkable stability. And when does civilization appear? 10,000 years ago, as soon as the climate gets stable. So the very thing that has made our civilization possible is the very thing that we are destroying right now, which is a stable climate. We're using the atmosphere as a garbage can, and it's causing the planet to overheat. It's causing sea level to rise. We just had massive erosion on the New Jersey coast as a hurricane came up, and it's causing an extinction rate that is starting to look like things that we have seen in the fossil record when we have a mass extinction. We are now the asteroid, but we don't have to be. And the message here at the Edelman Fossil Park is that, yes, we have some problems to solve here, but there's reason for hope. We have agency. And, hope without agency is really just desperation, but we don't need to despair because we can do something about it. The fastest growing form of new energy on this planet is solar. We had a month this year in 2025 where more electricity was generated by renewable sources than by coal. Um, we can do things. We can make some space for the natural world. Leave a little bit of your lawn, unmowed. Leave a brush pile for the small animals. If everybody did that, it would be the equivalent of like 9 Yellowstone national parks. And so there are things that we can do. We do have agency. And the message of deep time, the message of paleontology and geology is that we have to work for the kind of future that we want because it is not guaranteed. It's all too contingent. So if we want to pass on the kind of world that I know we all want for our posterity, for our children and our grandchildren, that's not going to happen on its own. We got to work for that world.
That is amazing. And I completely agree. And that's why I like talking to other geologists because we're like, no, we get the grand scheme of things, but we also understand the urgency that we're facing. But I like that the name of it is the Hall of Extinction, which sounds really cool and like super ominous. But then you're like, and hope.
And hope.
And
Yes,
hope.
and hope.
Because you can't end on a downer.
No,
You gotta think about what you can do.
that's
I
right.
think that's one of those lessons from the field too, is that even if you've got Bedouins with scimitars or like the most violent food poisoning of all time, or you might die on a cliff face, you keep going. And it's because you don't know what might be around that next corner. You don't know what might be past the plains of disappointment.
That's right.
You have any field plans or places you'd like to go still? Anything up ahead?
Um, yes, I have more work that I would like to do in Patagonia. There are some places in Africa that I would like to get to. We have a lot of results from our quarry right out back here that we are in the process of publishing. And then something that's really exciting in my life right now is I'm on the board of scientific advisors of Colossal Bioscience. And they are a CRISPR-based de-extinction company. But what I'm most excited about with them is all the modern conservation work that they are doing. I was just down at their headquarters last week in Texas. They've got incredible laboratories down there, and they're taking some really profound and important steps to help keep some living species from teetering over the brink into oblivion. For example, the red wolf, which many people may not have heard of because there's only about 20 of them that live in North Carolina right now. They could very easily become extinct in the near future. And when organisms breed sexually, you lose half the genes from each, reproduction. If you have a population that only has 20 individuals, there's a good chance that some of those genes that you're losing are not represented in the rest of the population. But what they have found is that coyotes have been interbreeding with red wolves for thousands of years, and they can mine the genomes of coyotes, find their red wolf bits, take them out, and then increase the genetic diversity of the red wolf population. And they hope to do this and put a more genetically diverse population in Louisiana. And, that's just amazing. They have developed an mRNA vaccine for Asian elephants so that the baby elephants are no longer dying of this epithelial herpes virus, which is taking them out in huge percentages. So
That's cool. I wonder if they can do
yeah,
something about that cancer that the Tasmanian devils are getting that's killing them, because I know that.
well, they are actually working on that, and
Oh,
like
cool.
directly, but indirectly, they're working to bring back the thylacine, the marsupial wolf, or also called the Tasmanian tiger.
Right.
That was the apex predator in the ecosystem in which the Tasmanian devils live. Now, what's happening is they get this I don't know, face rotting disease, and it's easily communicable. And if there's not a predator to take out the weaker members of that population, the dying ones have a chance to, mingle and spread that. And so having a predator in that ecosystem is probably going to help as well. So there's all kinds of things. People will conflate like mammoths and dinosaurs. mammoths are no closer in time to dinosaurs than we are, right?
Yeah.
The last population of mammoths went extinct 3,300 years ago on an island off Siberia. 3,300 years ago, there's
We were
pyramids.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's pyramids, there's written stories, there's beer, right? If you live in a
Mhm.
world that has beer, that's this world,
Yeah.
right? And so they have a place in this world.
We're in a really exciting time in human history where we can communicate with scientists and other disciplines and get the message out. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. It's not just extinction, there's also hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are not done exploring, that's for sure.
That wraps up the inaugural episode of Field Day with Jess Phoenix. Huge thank you to Dr. Kenneth Lacovara for taking the time to talk with us and tell us some amazing stories. Our theme music is by my awesome friend, Dan Waldkirch. I just love the way it sounds very Indiana Jones. He totally nailed it. If you want to support the podcast, which would be amazing because web hosting and production software and everything is not free, you can do that by signing up over on patreon.com/fielddaypod. That's patreon.com/fielddaypod. And that will help me bring you many more stories of science and exploration, which are all true tales from the ends of the earth. Thank you so much, everybody. And until next time, adventure on.